It's the Illegal Elbow Show. Welcome back. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Illegal Elbow Show. It's number 4. Hope you guys had a good New Year's. I didn't say that in the last video. My apologies. 2013, man. I think MMA is going to be a good. It's going to be a good year for MMA, man. That's what I'm thinking. Strikeforce closing their doors, closing up shop. Good bunch of fighters from Strikeforce coming over. All them guys coming over and see how they stack up. You know, we've seen a few already. Antonio Silva. My glorious backdrop here is messing with me. But we've seen a few of the Strikeforce guys coming over. Strikeforce champions. It's actually a pretty damn stacked card, man. It looks to be pretty awesome. January 12th, this weekend. It's a Saturday. On Showtime. If you got Showtime, man, tune in. It's going to be sick. Pretty damn... I mean, it's considering what, you know, how Strikeforce has been a little stripped down because of guys coming over from the UFC and stuff like that, and just contracts being done and whatnot. If there's a card that Strikeforce could put on that would be amazing with what they have left, this is it, man. This is it. Because it's a damn good looking card, so... But I'm going to jump on a couple of little news topics, just to throw some opinions out there and whatnot. A couple of guys out there making comments too, man. I appreciate it, you guys. Big time. I can't think of any names right up. Frank, appreciate your comments, man. Big time. There's a couple other names that they're not actually named, so I don't remember them as well. But a couple of new subs in the last week or so. I'm getting back into the groove here, doing videos, man. So if you look at the dates and all that, you'll see a huge gap into the videos I've done, you know. Just fell out of it for a while there, man. So busy and stuff. And anyway, getting back to it, man. Some other news. Speaking of Showtime, they are looking to further their endeavors in MMA. You know, even though Strikeforce is shutting its doors and everything's over with, they had the option to continue with Strikeforce and keep running the promotion, but they decided not to. Steven Espinoza, executive vice president, worked tightly with Strikeforce, you know, and he's really looking to stick his neck out there a bit and get some other deals, you know, with some MMA promotion. See, right now, what he's kind of doing is kind of evaluating, like, Invicta, Legacy Fighting Championships, also Shark Fights. But Shark Fights is not amazing, but they put on a couple of pretty cool cards, especially being on Showtime, you know what I mean? If you got cable and you got Showtime, which I have Showtime for, you know, Dexter and Homeland, you know, I'm into those shows big time. There's a couple other shows on there that I like too, so. Speaking of Dexter, geez, we gotta wait till September again, or October, whichever month it starts, but fucking A, man, that sucks. So that's kind of some of the promotions they're looking at, which I think is a smart move, because maybe Legacy Fighting Championships, I don't know, man, I don't want to say it's not well known or not promoted enough or something like that, but I mean, Invicta's made a stink compared to some of these other organizations, you know what I mean? They just had a pay-per-view, mind you, it was no knocking on them or anything, it was a failing pay-per-view. Everybody bought it, I think it was $7.99 or something like that, $8, around $8. And the stream just completely went out. It was going in and out, you know, sound was fucking up. So they had some issues going on, which is, you know, it's par, you know what I mean? Shit happens. So they refunded everybody's money, you know, and you know, shit happens when you don't have big backing, you know, like a Showtime or, you know, you only got so many investors to work with and you only got so much money to work with. Hopefully the health, you know, of women's MMA, if it's going to be a mainstay, and which I'm betting it will, obviously, since the UFC's jumped on board with it, which, mind you, they're having problems, you know, selling tickets for their Ronda Rousey card. Ronda Rousey taking on Liz Carmouche, which is not a surprise. I mean, the first women's main event on a UFC card ever. So, I mean, it's you might see a little bit of a setback there, you know what I mean? Personally, I think it should have been on, like, a Fuel or something like that. Put it on free TV first, you know, and maybe as a co-main event or something like that. The first one out the gate should have been a pay-per-view. I just don't think it's a good idea. And it's for a title, which nobody won any fights yet in the UFC, so how can there be a champion? It's silly, man. Silly. I don't know. In the back of my head, I kind of think maybe Dana was a little coerced, you know, into what somebody wanted. That's just a hypothesis, you know. I don't know. All I know is he likes her an awful lot, so And you guys know who I'm talking about. Speaking of her, Rousey, she will be defending her UFC 135-pound title. They tried forever to get, damn it, what's her name? She just got suspended for some kind of use of PEDs. She's getting close to the end of her suspension, I believe. Chris Cyborg Santos. They tried like the dickens to put that fight on. UFC did, but her doctor's like, you're not healthy enough to go down to 135. It's just you're a big girl. You know what I mean? Cutting that much weight, you're gonna be, skin, muscle, and bone. I mean, basically what he's saying is it's too unhealthy for you to go down to that weight, and for UFC to expect her to do that and base her signing on that, whether she can make that weight or not, is fucking ridiculous. They're assholes for doing that. They could have signed her, made some big ass fights with her at 145 pound, and if excuse me, was that out loud? If Ronda Rousey wanted to fight her bad enough, you could do a catch weight or something like that. So it's not a complete disadvantage for one person and a total advantage for another. I thought that was bullshit. It's the same thing with the GSP fucking fight. GSP and Anderson Silva. Why does Anderson Silva need to come all the way down to your weight? And GSP made a good comment recently about how, and I've always thought that. I'm like, why have one huge disadvantage for either guy? Have them both come right in the middle, catch weight fight, if they're going to fight. Personally, I don't even think it's necessary. Why even worry about it? They're two different weight classes. Who gives a shit? Anyway, man. So, that's the deal with the Rousey Chris Cyborg thing, why it never happened. Which, that's probably old news, really. I mean, you guys probably heard about that weeks ago. But in other news, Alistair Overeem has been granted his license and cleared to face Antonio Silva at UFC 156. Antonio Silva, somebody start praying for him, because Overeem's got a lot to prove, a lot to make up for the fans, in my opinion. Silva does have the puncher's chance, you know what I mean? Because we've seen Overeem knocked out before. You never know, but I don't see Overeem losing that fight. Hector Lombard knocked out Paul Harris. Just wasn't even out the gate. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to mess around in this fight. He must have had the, like they say, the UFC jitters or whatever. Obviously, it's got to be true, because they look like two different fighters when you see his fight between Tim Bosch and his fight between Josimar, Paul Harris. Josimar, Rosamar, Josimar, however they want to say it. Facing Okami, set for UFC on Fuel 8 in Japan. So that should be pretty sweet, man. Demetrius Johnson, UFC on Fox 6, his opponent, which is John Dodson. Just a recent winner of, top 15 or 14 or whatever, which I don't know. I don't keep up with the damn numbers, man. That's Demetrius Johnson giving some props up, saying, hey, man, he's a super athletic guy. It's going to be a tough fight. I think it's going to be sick. It's a really, really cool matchup. Two guys that are, he's calling him super athletic. He's pretty damn athletic himself, super fast. It's going to be a weird, sick fight, man. Francis Carmel trains with GSP. Calling out Mark Munoz or Yushin Okami for 158, which is kind of hard because 158, I believe, is right around, it could be. I mean, he might be cleared enough to fight it, depending on how the fight with Hector Lombard goes, which I don't think it's going to go that great for him. But we've seen weirder things happen, man. I mean, Carmel was a badass wrestler, man. Great groundwork. I wouldn't say a super exciting fighter to watch, but I mean, him and Mark Munoz, both having big wrestling backgrounds, could make for a good, some good stand-up. You know what I mean? So, kind of, their strengths might cancel each other out a bit. Invicta FC was already out the gate with another card, man, another new card. So, which is funny, man. It was yesterday they brought that to light, and pretty surprising, man. They're already right on the ball, out with another card. They're making a big name for themselves. You know what I mean? Doing really well, putting a lot of cards together, man. I hope they really start becoming a mainstay, because there's got to be promotions out there that compete with UFC, and there will be, you know what I mean? There will be, whether UFC, goes forward and buys them. Another huge piece of news, too, that I want to jump on is a recent Twitter comment from Eddie Alvarez. Bellator could not match what UFC was offering, so now they're suing me. I didn't get a whole lot of extra news on that, but come on, man, that's bullshit. I don't know what it entails. For all I know, it could be one fight in his career. I doubt it. But I'm sure that's not what it is. That's the headlines. If you want to look more into it. And another quick little tidbit. Hector Lombard's called out Michael Bisping. So if Bisping makes his way out of his fight with Belfort, which that's going to be a tough fight, man. That could be a very tough fight. I don't think you can... I think it's going to be hard for him to stick and move his way out of that one. You know what I mean? Without, landing some good bombs or if Vitor Belfort's working on that sub game like he was with John Jones, could be a bad night for Bisping, man. In stand up or the ground, you know what I mean? So... But, Bisping, I've never been a huge fan of Bisping, but, lately I can give the guy props and give him a little bit of respect, with recent performances. He has improved. He has gotten better. And his trash talking's actually gone down a little bit, too. But, he still does it, but it's not, maybe not as bad, maybe not as tactful as it was before, or obnoxious as it was. Anyway, man, we're going to get to the Strikeforce card. The last Strikeforce card ever. It's going to be a depressing night for me, but at the same time, it's going to be a damn good time. Had by all. The main event is Nate Marquardt versus Tarek Saffiedine, and there's just a whole slew of excellent matchups on it as well, which it features Ed Herman. That was kind of weird. Ed Herman is a UFC fighter, but he's fighting in the last card of Strikeforce, which is kind of weird. Pat Healy's taking on a complete total newcomer, so he went from a title shot to facing a total newcomer, which I'm glad that fight didn't even take place, Pat Healy and Gilbert Melendez. I thought that was the stupidest fucking idea ever. It's like, come on, man. I thought that was so damn stupid. Ryan Couture, 5-1, taking on KJ Nunes. I think this is a bad fight for Ryan Couture. Because we've seen Ryan Couture get knocked the fuck out before, or at least get beat up. And KJ Nunes, I think, has got a good chance of doing it again, And that could be a make or break kind of a deal. I think Ryan Couture will probably get into the UFC just because of who he is. I hate to say it, or hate to sound, biased about it, but I think he will. But KJ Nunes comes in here and say maybe in the first round just goes full bore and whips his ass, knocks him out. I think KJ Nunes can go ahead and personally, why not? You know what I mean? But I think there's some other fights on this card that are decision makers, whether these guys are going to be in the UFC or not. Tim Kennedy taking on Trevor Smith. Tim Kennedy is one of them guys that, and he's good everywhere, you know what I mean? So it'll be an interesting fight, to say the least. Anthony Smith, last time I saw him fight, he was just a ball of energy. You know what I mean? The guy never really slowed down and was a great striker. Taking a Hodger Gracie, Hodger Gracie moved down to middleweight. Came into Strikeforce light heavyweight. Lost to one of the dudes and maybe realized, you know what, maybe I can go down to middleweight and have a little better luck there. He's 5-1. Not bad by any means, man. And he's damn good, man. He's damn good. But I think Anthony Smith's going to be an interesting fight. Anthony Smith's got a lot of experience on him, even though Hodger Gracie, you come from a Gracie family, you're already going to have, a good wealth of knowledge in your corner, you know what I mean? So, interesting fight, man, by all means, though. And I think with a good showing, win or lose, both of these guys have a very good shot at getting the UFC, just my opinion. Pat Healy, I'm not going to rag on him. He's fighting Kurt Holobaugh, 7-0. He's undefeated. But, Pat Healy's got a shit ton of experience over this guy. He should probably mop the floor up with him. But, and I know you can't base it on all that. So I don't want to base it all on records and experience and shit like that, because sometimes you can have a guy that has a lot of experience but not official, you know what I mean? Official records, you know what I mean? Type experience. But Jacare Souza taking on Ed Herman. Cool fight. I think it's actually a good test for Souza because, Ed Herman's the kind of guy he can take a stinking beating, man. He can take a beating and still have you in serious trouble. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, man, this is gonna be a damn good fight. I think Ed Herman's still gonna be in the UFC. Jacare Souza, if he was to lose and he still doesn't get in the UFC, would be fucking ridiculous. This is my opinion. Mike Kyle taking on Gegard Mousasi. Gegard Mousasi, as far as I know, has already been approached. Or they're in talks. So they're already in talks of him getting the UFC. So I would bet, once we see the outcome of this fight, I'm going to go ahead and bet on Gegard Mousasi winning it. But we've seen We've seen stranger things happen, man. And Mike Kyle's no joke. You know what I mean? So I know his last fight or his last couple fights. I mean, he had a really quick knockout loss recently, and it looked really bad. I think it was. Damn it! I can't. There's no way I'll be able to remember the guy's name. If somebody were to say it to me right now, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's it." Because he's. Was it Feijao? Feijao. I think Feijao knocked him the fuck out, and I think it got overturned because they said Feijao he tested positive for something. I don't know what it was, but I'm expecting it to be a pretty good fight. Gura Masasi, I think, is probably better everywhere. It doesn't change anything. Mike Giles a tough guy, very tough guy. So we'll see what happens, man. Josh Barnett taking on Nander Gelmino. If I'm saying that name right, he's 11-3, virtually unknown. He's from Austria. Looks pretty mean. Nobody really knows much about him. I would imagine if he mops the stinking floor up with Josh Barnett, maybe UFC might come calling, maybe, with an 11-3 record. He's not exactly a newbie, but will be a newbie to UFC. And, he'll get the fights accordingly, and that kind of shit. To work his way up or whatever. And maybe he won't. Maybe he won't get a chance at all. I think Josh Barnett, win or lose, it may just be Josh Barnett's time. I don't know. I think he is. I know he's at least mid-30s, 34, 35. I could be wrong, give a year or two, whatever. But I know he's getting to the age where, things start getting rough, man. You get in your 35, 36, up close to that 40 range, man. Things aren't the same. You know what I mean? You're not that, piss and vinegar 22, 23, 25-year-old. You know what I mean? Some of these guys are getting their pros and they're 27 years old. It's like perfect time to go after it now. You know what I mean? But like I said, man, Barnett's still very powerful, very, very strong wrestler. Great submissions. I think he's got most of his wins, obviously, by submission. So it's virtually unknown fighter coming in against Josh Barnett. It's just almost kind of silly. It's kind of like the Pat Healy fight, taking on a complete no-namer. But I think they probably want to pick somebody that Josh might have a good chance of winning. Daniel Cormier taking on Dion Starring. Dion Starring, I don't know a ton about him, but he's got great experience. He's 28-7, so I mean he's obviously not a joke. He's got a lot of wins. You know what I mean? He's a lot of wins, a lot of experience. Be an interesting contest for Cormier. I think Cormier is just a specimen right now. I mean, the way this guy uses his center of gravity and just throws people around and effortless. You know what I mean? The way he threw Josh Barnett around, the way he manipulates, with his overall wrestling. I mean, it's pretty sick, man. And I think Daniel Cormier is going to be the guy to beat in the next year or two. You know what I mean? He's going to be scaring light heavyweight champions and heavyweight champions, depending on where he wants to go. You know what I mean? So, I like Tarek Saffiedine. I like Nate Marquardt, man. This is one of them fights, It seems like a lot of fights. Obviously, we're going to get to that point where you're seeing guys that you're fans of both of them, and you're seeing him fight, man. It always gets to that point, Tarek Saffiedine, I think he's got a great shot getting the UFC. He's 13-3. Stays on the right path, you know what I mean? He has a really good performance against Nate Marquardt. I would kind of give this to Nate Marquardt, but you never really know. Tarek Saffiedine's great karate background, man. I mean, this guy started out doing karate. I think when he started doing karate, I want to say like in the single digits, man. I mean, he was like 6, 7 years old doing karate. Eventually got into wrestling. Started getting into jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter, but I mean, obviously, his main forte is, his entire life is karate, you know what I mean? So the striking's there. He knows how to strike, which could give Nate Marquardt, we've seen Nate Marquardt have a hard time against really good strikers, you know what I mean? But Tarek Saffiedine has not dealt with the experience of a Nate Marquardt. We've seen firsthand Nate Marquardt's experience with guys in this area, and I'm talking about Woodley. Tyron Woodley did good. He did really good against Nate Marquardt, and it proves that he's a solid up-and-comer, even though he was the champ at the time. I still consider him a solid up-and-comer because he's still got a ton to learn. You know what I mean? Got on the bike and rolled right through all the champion, all the top guys in the champion and got the belt. But he had never faced somebody with the experience of a Nate Marquardt. It's just, he'd never faced anybody like that. And Nate Marquardt said it and proved it. If I can take him in the later rounds, I can wear him out, and I can break him. And he did, man. He did just that. You know what I mean? The last 4 or 5 shots that Tyron Woodley took, he couldn't get out of the way of him. I mean, it was just so slick the way Nate Marquardt went about that fight. Tarek Safine's a good guy. I think he could wear down, maybe, third round, late third round, maybe even towards the end of the second. He could start to wear down a bit. You know what I mean? And that's if Marquardt isn't able to make it weigh in his favor beforehand. You never know, man. I mean, I think Marquardt's a better fighter than he was a couple of years ago, but he's not facing top UFC competition either. So it is a little different, But I think this is good experience for Nate Marquardt to kind of, hey, let's get it back a notch here, and kind of mentally work your way back into it. You know what I mean? Because coming off a few wins, obviously, is going to be better than coming off a few losses. Your head's in the game. You're thinking positive is a huge part of it. You know what I mean? You got to have your head in the game. You got to know in your head you're going to win it. So you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that from experience. I'm just saying that in life experience. You got to have your head in the game. Whatever it is you're doing, you got to have your head in the game in order to get the job done and feel good about it. So it's going to be a great night, man. I'm super excited to see it, man. I hope you guys are too. Hope you guys enjoy the video. And I'll be back probably, I'm thinking Sunday, Monday-ish, something like that, to talk about the aftermath. Speaking of aftermath, my good buddy Dan, if you want to jump on there, man, jump on Facebook, MMA Aftermath. Add him as a friend, Also, head over to illegalelbow.com or illegalelbowradio.com. Either one, it's the same page. I'll see you guys next time, man. Sub if you haven't. Take care, man. Bam! It's the Illegal Elbow Show.